1998, the town of Putnam established the Putnam River Trail. A park at the corner of Kennedy Drive and Providence Street marks its beginning. It is dedicated to Robert J. Miller, the town's first municipal historian. The following quotation summarizes that event. Perhaps Miller's greatest lifelong assets have been his love of people, his listening ear, and a willingness to help anyone in need, regardless of nationality or creed. He was born at Day Kimball Hospital in Putnam in 1920 to Telesphore Miller and Edith Johnson. The family had migrated from Canada, and his father's French-Canadian ancestry felt the need to anglicize the family name from Millier to Miller. Perhaps the fact that his mother could trace her roots back to the Mayflower was an early impetus for his fascination with history. Bob's early days were spent in the family home on School Street, where he and brother Norman, better known as Spike, spent winters skating on Prentice Pond and summers constantly exploring the woods behind his home. Early schooling was at St. Mary's, where he joined the church scout group that sparked a lifelong interest in this activity. As a member of Troop 21, he attained the rank of Eagle Scout, served as camp counselor as a teen, was a scoutmaster for 25 years, and became district commissioner, leading to the Silver Beaver Award, the highest honor in scouting, for accomplishments and service. St. Mary's provided a jump start for Bob's interest in community service, but his education and accomplishments at Putnam High School further developed those skills. Holding office all 4 years, including president as sophomore and senior, led to his being voted the most popular male in the class of 1938 and most likely to succeed. In 1942, Bob was hired at the newly formed chromium plating company called National Chromium. He rose through the ranks to supervisor and eventually vice president before retiring in 1985. It was a 43-year association with the additional unofficial title of the company's Idea Man. National Chromium is now owned by his nephew, John Miller. There was a 2-year break in the chromium plating business as World War II came calling. Never one to be satisfied with staying on the first rung, while serving in the Philippines in combat intelligence and prisoner detail, Bob attained the rank of sergeant and was awarded several medals and ribbons in the Asiatic Pacific Theater. Returning stateside, Bob set sail on his future. In 1948, he married Marion Livestrom. They had 6 children. With his work obligations and scouting activities, time with the kids was limited, so he sometimes took them to the shop, where they discovered an exotic foreign country among the chemical tanks, the polishing barrels, and the pneumatic dolly.
So in the winter, we didn't have a driveway. He would put these 2 boards up on the front lawn, and he'd drive the car up on the lawn so it was off the street. And the car would face the picture window in our living room. So, and he had false teeth at a young age. So what he would do sometimes is he could see us sitting on the couch watching TV, so he would come up to the window, it would be dark out, he'd have a flashlight under his chin like this, and he'd knock on the window and he'd push the top plate out at us, and make a face, and we just thought that was hilarious, Another thing he could do was he could gobble like a turkey. So at Thanksgiving, we always had to have that repertoire. But he had a good sense of humor, and he was very, very patient with us too.
Relaxation never seemed to be a word Bob practiced. As his scouting activities waned, he responded to the lure of the Putnam political scene. He began by serving on the Water Commission, then served 6 years as selectman, and eventually as the Commissioner of Economic Development. When Marion passed in 1973, a new personal chapter began. His marriage to Loretta Johnston in 1997 drastically altered the family composition. Loretta had 8 living children and Bob 5. And while some from both families had left their respective nests, holidays and gatherings at the house on Park Street often resulted in controlled chaos. Loretta also brought Alexander's Lake into the equation, and it was the perfect summer gathering spot for both families. Bob's favorite activity was teaching the grandkids how to fish, but he also managed to catch a little quiet time for some solo casting. Bob indicated that his interest in local history was sparked when he was doing grant writing as a selectman and discovered that the Hale Manufacturing Mill was founded by a relative of Samuel Slater. It brought about the realization that many old buildings in the region had historical significance, and the lore of learning about Putnam's past became a passion. Textile mills were his focal point, and their sociological and economic impact was thoroughly studied and then passed on to young and old in the community. Slideshows, lectures, walking tours, and narrative bus trips told the history of the textile industry through these historic local mills and the reason for their subsequent decline.
If it had to do with the history of Putnam, Bob was the go-to guy because he remembered absolutely everything that ever happened during his lifetime. At one time, of course, half of Putnam, one side of the river was Killingly, and the west side of the river was Pomfret. And so when the town was incorporated in 1855, it became known as Putnam then, and Bob had saved everything that he possibly could to be a reminder of all the different things that happened in Putnam.
Bob became the history consultant for curriculum programs in Putnam Public Schools, and the Robert J. Miller Award is still presented annually to a deserving Putnam Elementary School student. In 1978, Bob was named to the Governor's Committee for Restoration of Historical Assets and received the Community Volunteer Award at a Yukon ceremony. Association with the Aspenok Historical Society led to being named Putnam's first town historian. In this capacity, he engaged in many projects, including restoration of Katy Cop Cottage, a production of a DVD featuring the flood of 1955, and co-authored a booklet entitled Perspectives of Putnam. After the passing of Loretta, Bob married Winnie Savulis in 2005. And while he allowed his hectic schedule to ease somewhat, total relaxation was never a consideration. There were social outings to attend, tennis matches to play, classes at Quinebaug Valley Community College, and continual involvement with the local historical society. From Boy Scout activities to politics to the historical aspects of Putnam, he loved being part of it all and contributing to the community he loves so much.
He could talk to anybody, you know. He'd take us on errands on a Saturday morning. That was our time with him because he was so busy. And everywhere he went, people would stop to talk to him. And he was good at listening, and he was good at talking as well. You know, he never passed judgment. And I think that's another thing that I carry with him, and I hope that we do too. He never passed judgment, and anyone took them as they were. And but he could talk to anybody.
He absolutely loved Putnam, and every aspect and everyone that lived there was his friend, and if they weren't, he would try to make them his friend.
In 1997, Bob Miller was encouraged by his children to write his autobiography. In his last paragraph, he states, "I'm 77 years old, and I can't imagine how life will be 25 years from now in 2022. Well, Bob, it just got a lot better. Tonight, you are being inducted into Putnam High School's Wall of Honor.